and to lead the pledge to the greatest country in the United States, David Stein.
All right, please join me and say it like we mean it. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Hello, everyone. My name is Derek Wilson. I am the chairman of the Texas Young Republican Federation. Thank you, Lone Clapper. I appreciate it. All right. So I know you're not here to see me, and I once heard it said that the mind cannot comprehend what the seat cannot endure. So I'm not going to take a ton of your time. Mostly at this point, my job is entailed of thanking people. So first off, thank you to all of you for being here and supporting us. I want to thank our speakers who represent young Republicans in Texas and hear what to them. I've been very impressed with the leadership of this state, from our Republican legislators all the way up to the governor, and how in tune they've been with the needs of the next generation. So before we get started, I want to do one shout out to Judge Tano Tiarina. I've often said that there are good people in the Democratic Party, but they're quickly becoming Republicans. Well, the judge has converted to the Republican Party from the Democratic Party. We welcome him here tonight. He's over there. I also want to thank a few of our sponsors before we get started real quick. I want to thank Powering Texans, Congressman Morgan Luttrell, the Austin Police Association, Texans for Reasonable Solutions, Eagle Energy, the Houston Firefighters Association, Texas Realtors, U.S. Senator John Cornyn, Texans for Lawsuit Reform, Permit Power, Senator Kelly Hancock, American Promise, Cross Oak Group, the Lowy Law Firm, and the American Conservation Coalition. Thank you for supporting us here tonight. So we'll get right on with the program. I want to welcome to the stage to do our welcome, Senator Brian Hughes.
Well, good evening. Aren't you glad you're here tonight? I am too. Well, there's a lot going on in Washington. You've heard about some of that. Last week, I learned about a veteran, an older gentleman, let's just say an old man for our purposes, who was in Washington. And so he went to the White House and went up to one of the gates. There's a Marine there guarding the gate. And the old man said to the Marine, "I want to see President Biden." Yeah, and the Marine, with his great professionalism and military precision, said to him, "Joe Biden is not the president." So the old man left. The next day, the old man comes back. Same time, same gate, same young Marine. And the old man says, "I want to see President Biden." And the Marine says to him once again, "Joe Biden is not the president." The old man leaves. Third time, he comes back the next day. Same time, same gate, same young Marine. And the old man says, "I want to see President Biden." And the young Marine says to him, "Sir, I'm telling you for the third time, Joe Biden is not the president of the United States." And the old man smiled and said, "I know. I just like to hear you say that." And that's whether that is apocryphal or literally true, it certainly could be. We are all excited beyond measure about what's going on in Washington, especially when we think about Texans like Brooke Rollins. Amen. Texans like Scott Turner running federal agencies. Texans like former Congressman Ratcliffe, who's running the Central Intelligence Agency. All Texans, just some of the Texans there, and great conservatives from across the country who are bringing so much common sense back. And we're thankful for what they're doing, but I know in this room, I bet there's a number of things we agree on. One of those is we're not waiting on Washington, are we? Texas doesn't do that. We're not waiting on Washington. We are tackling head-on the challenges our folks are facing. And so let me just say again, by way of welcome, each one of you. We're thankful for our young Republicans, for our Republican women, and for all the folks that worked to put this together. And let's take a moment and do that. A lot of work went into this event. Of course, we're thankful for the sponsors, but let's think about the volunteers and those folks who brought us here. Let's thank all those who worked so hard to put all of this together. Thank you. And there are a number of esteemed members of the legislature here, plus me, and they're all going to be recognized. I do want to stress, even though this building has Austin in its name, we're not in Austin. We're in Georgetown, and we are in the district of Honorable Caroline Harris, a star in the Texas House. Her family's here. Senator Short is probably here, or he will be here, I know, but it's a blessing to have conservative representation this close to Austin. So thanks again for what you're doing for the whole state. And so a few things you're aware that are going on. We're moving quickly in the legislature, in the Senate, and the House. We know that people are still facing the rising cost of living. And so that's why we're working on things like pulling those property taxes down further and doing things about the cost of living. We know that the feds are working on a bill to require proof of citizenship to register to vote, but we're not waiting on Washington. We will pass legislation this session that says to register to vote in Texas, show proof of U.S. citizenship. That's not a radical concept. You know, a lot of these things are going on. I'm looking at Chairman Buckley, and we can't help but think about him and the Chairman Creighton. And finally, after all these years, after all this work by many people in this room and people who have passed away before we got it done, finally in Texas, we are almost at the point where the parent will have the option to choose the best educational option for their child. Public school, private school, homeschool. We're almost there. We are almost there. So many exciting things. One issue we're focusing on with young Republicans and in the Texas Senate is that of home ownership, that American dream, right? That American dream of home ownership. For most of us, the biggest purchase that we will make, the way that we will gather wealth and accumulate wealth for our families, that we will pass down, that's been the cornerstone of the American dream as long as anybody can remember. But you know what's happening. That's getting further and further out of reach for many Americans. Let me be clear. We do not accept that we have to give up on the American dream of home ownership for every American, every Texan. Amen? We reject that. We're not waiting on Washington. Here's what we're doing. As the cost of living goes up, we're working on those property taxes coming down further. We're going to keep doing that. Everybody knows what that's about, and you're going to see tangible results there this session again. And what about the cost of housing itself? There are a lot of things going into that, but one thing that's causing housing to go up is government regulations that increase the cost of housing. So that's our target this time. When there's a local, state, or other government regulation that limits supply of housing and makes costs go up, that is in the crosshairs. You're going to see legislation from the House and the Senate that puts more land available for people to build homes, more land for people to develop homes, removes silly regulations that take land out of the market and raise the cost of homes. So a lot of exciting things are happening. You're going to hear from some great speakers tonight. And I want to say on behalf of Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, a big supporter of our young Republicans and our TFRW, a regular at this event, had an emergency arise, and I'm honored to be here giving you a welcome on his behalf and on my behalf. And as I go to my seat, let me just say this. I know we're going to have a great time tonight. So many people I want to acknowledge, but I just want us to bask for a moment in where we are as Americans and as Texans. This is pretty much the only place in the world where the government works for the people. A few places throughout history have experienced a little bit of that, never like we have. We are the only place in the world that enjoys free speech, freedom of religion, the right to assemble, the right to petition the government for redress. All of these uniquely American rights given to us by our Creator. We are in the most privileged position. And even with the high cost of living, even with Biden inflation, even with Austin traffic, even with all these challenges, I want to remind myself and each of you that the poorest among us is so much better off materially than 99% of the population of the world. And that's not because we deserve it. It's not because we earned it. That's God's grace. And here we are in this beautiful place enjoying a nice meal. It's up to us. It's up to us to be stewards of that system, stewards of those rights and the responsibilities that go with them. I know you're doing this. I'm preaching to the choir. I just want to encourage you, and I want to remind you of that most important fact, that that same Creator who gave each one of you those individual rights, the one who made you, the one who knows you better than anyone and loves you more than anyone can, that same Creator sent His Son, Jesus Christ, God Himself, to come to this earth and live a perfect life, and then to give His life on the cross. The Bible says He died for my sins and your sins and the sins of the whole world. And you know what happened after that, don't you? He rose up from the grave. He rose from the grave in victory over death and over sin and over hell. And the Bible says if we turn to Him in faith, we can have a relationship with Him, our sins forgiven, and a home in heaven. And by the way, that was not from the state of Texas or the Texas Senate or the Republican women or the young Republicans, though I don't think they would mind. That was me exercising my free speech and my freedom of religion. But I love you. That's why I want to share that with you tonight. We're going to have a great time. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for letting me be with you. God bless you.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. I'd like to welcome at this time Senator Kelly Hancock.
Well, welcome, welcome. We are going to pass the offering plates in honor of Senator Hughes here in a little bit, so just be prepared. No, it is my great honor to be with you. I appreciate it on doing that. Both, I guess, young Republicans, and then as I look about across the room, and I am in attendance, some not so young Republicans, Mr. Baum. No, it is an honor to be here, and it's a privilege for me to introduce the governor, our great governor, to you. And as I do that, and thinking about young Republicans, I did think about a time in his life as young Republicans. And I know many of you here, in fact, I saw the governor holding a baby, taking a picture, that when you're young, your life is before you, right? You have dreams of what's going to go on. Some of you are newly married. You're thinking about how much the future holds for you. And I reflected back on a time that was our governor, right? Graduated from University of Texas, had his law degree, newly married. And as a runner, I know probably a little bit of what that conversation took place is he puts on his running shoes, he puts on his workout clothes, and he says, "Honey, I'm going to go out for a run. I'll be back in a little while." And he didn't come back in a little while. In fact, all of a sudden, those hopes and those dreams that were before him came crashing down like a tree falling. And you know, it was during that time for Governor Abbott, when devastation strikes, when a crisis hits in your life and my life, that it will either break you or it'll make you. And Romans 5:3-4 tells us that suffering, we should take glory in suffering, because it is suffering that brings about perseverance. Perseverance brings about character, and character brings about hope. And as I have the privilege to introduce our governor, it is those things that I see in him in times of crisis. That it was that crisis in his life It did not break him, but I am convinced it made him into the governor we have today. And we see him as governor with perseverance, never giving up on school choice. We truly see in him great character. And through his perseverance and his character, he gives each of us, I know me, hope. Think about the crisis he's gone through and the character he's shown through it. And having gone through some of that with him, Governor, I think it's your finest hours. That yes, you do the day-to-day fine. You're a great governor day-to-day. But it is in crisis that I personally have seen you and been on the phone with you. He rises to another level. He does not allow a crisis, whether it be COVID, an incredible winter storm that freezes every county in the state of Texas for the first time since 1800s. But you think about the crisis that we've had with Governor Abbott, and I can tell you from an inside view that I don't think there's a governor alive or a governor in the past that could manage it with perseverance and with character. And think about what we came out of since he's been governor. Leading the nation, economic engine literally untouched. When we came out the other side, through his leadership, his guidance, and trust me, very hands-on guidance, he's into the details. But it was that one event, I believe, as a young man with a new bride, that he picked himself up, literally. And the perseverance and the character and that hope was built within your next speaker, and one you need to stand and give a rousing applause for, not for who he is, but also for what he has done for this great state of Texas. Let's welcome Governor Abbott.
Thank you, guys. Y'all are awesome. And give it up for Senator Kelly Hancock. Kelly, thank you for the kind words. And a big thank you to the Texas Young Republican Federation, TFRW, and Republican County Chairs Association. So I've been told what I assume to be a fact that you can disprove if you want to. But this is the first time that those three organizations have come together to host an event. This, in a way, is Texas Republican political history. And I want to commend you for all coming together for the cause of celebrating what we're fighting for, to keep Texas a dark red state here in the United States of America. So you literally represent and embody what it is that we're seeking to achieve as Republicans. The fact of the matter is that the way that we win, the way that we will continue to dominate Democrats, the way that we will continue to purge this liberalism that's trying to seep its way into the state of Texas, is by having things like tonight, where we have different Republican groups coming together and say, listen, we are all one. We support Republican values, and together we will ensure we will never turn into California or any leftist vision. And thank you for what you did this past election. You all saw the results in Texas. almost a record-breaking election in Texas. One of the highest voter turnouts and highest Republican wins that we've had. Also what happened historically to all of the counties along the border and all the counties adjacent to them. That was once the blue wall in the state of Texas. That blue wall is now red in the state of Texas. And listen, we know that obviously having Trump at the top of the ticket made a huge difference. But remember this fact. The Trump team had to go all in and use all of their money on all of these swing states. We didn't have presidential money here in the state of Texas. We had to fend for ourselves. Fending for ourselves means collaboration among organizations like those with us here tonight. Is that collaboration, working on voter engagement, voter turnout. You'll know there's really one thing that wins elections: voter turnout. The groups here tonight excel at voter turnout. You are the reason why we win elections in Texas. Also want to thank members of the Texas legislature who gather with us here tonight. There's a mix of those who've been around for a few sessions and those who are here for their very first session. I will tell you, I'm not sure if I have witnessed a freshman class that's come with their lunch pail ready to go to work and make a difference in the future of the state of Texas as the freshman class in the Texas legislature this session. I don't know the schedule of events tonight, so I don't know if this is going to happen. I want to make sure that we don't pass over it for it not to happen. So I want to just use this moment in time to have every member of the Texas House and Texas Senate, would you please stand, recognize you, and have everybody here tonight thank you for your service to the great state of Texas. For just a moment, let's go back in time 1 year. What was going on this time last year? There was one issue that permeated everything and everybody across the entire United States of America, and that issue was the border, the crisis at the border, the crisis caused by Joe Biden's refusal to enforce the laws, allowing more than 11 million people to cross the border, including murderers, rapists, known terrorists, and it was chaotic. Then fast forward to today. What are you seeing on the border today? None of that. None of that. Because we have a president in Donald Trump who made a promise and lived up to his promise that on day one he would close the border, and he has. You could contend he was premature because, in fact, the border seemingly closed when the polls closed on November the 5th. The world knew there was a new sheriff in town, and that sheriff was going to enforce the rule of law in the United States of America. Not long after the election, I got a phone call from Donald Trump. Donald Trump thanked Texas for stepping up and doing what we did over the past 4 years. Texas was the only state that stood in defiance of Joe Biden's open border policies. We said, we will challenge that. We don't care what Joe Biden says. We're going to fight, and we're going to secure the border ourselves. the only state to ever build our own border wall, the only state to deploy thousands of National Guard to the border to build hundreds of miles of razor wire border barrier, the only state to deploy buoys in the water designed by the Border Patrol to deny illegal entry, the only state that built military bases, 2 of them, on our border to house our military to maintain a constant presence on that border. And we deployed the Texas Department of Public Safety to root out, identify, and to arrest anybody crossing the border illegally. Also, as a byproduct of all that, and this is important in our negotiations with the federal government, it's the fact that the Texas Department of Public Safety alone seized more than 600 million deadly doses of fentanyl. That's more than enough to kill every man, woman, and child in the United States, Canada, and Mexico combined. Here's the point, and the point that I make to leaders in Washington, D.C. No one in any of the other states of America knows who is alive in that state today because of fentanyl taken off the streets by the Texas Department of Public Safety. The reason why President Trump thanked me is because the fight that we made to defend the border and actually the problems that it caused in other states, it caused people in Washington, D.C., in New York State, in Illinois, in Colorado, across the country to realize this is not just a Texas issue or a border issue. The border has gone to all states in the United States. This is an American issue, and we need a president who's going to fix it, and that president is Donald J. Trump. I want you to know that Texas is supporting Donald Trump's crackdown on the border more than any other state. Our National Guard deployed down there, and they've been deputized as law enforcement officers to work alongside the Border Patrol to arrest and apprehend, to detain, and to prepare for deportation anybody who dares to cross our border illegally. And you hear how ICE and Homeland Security investigations, how they go into communities large and small across the state, across the country, where their job is to identify, locate, and arrest criminal, illegal immigrants and detain them and then either jail them or deport them. As the federal government, either through ICE or HSI, whatever agency, makes their way across Texas doing that, they do it with Texas Department of Public Safety officers side by side with them, assisting in arresting, detaining, and deporting those criminals from our country. And then something that I began working with the border czar. Isn't it nice to have a border czar who's a real border czar, and Tom Homan? If you went to Hollywood and you went to all the castings and said, I need a border czar, Tom Homan would be your border czar. So literally days after the election, I started talking with Tom Homan about what we could do working together. Among the items discussed with him back in November was addressing the problem that had arisen in Colony Ridge. And he worked and he planned and finally yesterday acted, working again with DPS, HSI, and ICE. They went into Colony Ridge and began arresting people, shutting down businesses, shutting down operations, shutting down the illegal immigrants who were there. As we march forward, we know over the next 4 years that we're going to have a president who's going to secure our border far more than any president in the history of America. Going back to what Texas did, it was really remarkable. We were able to, in 1 year, reduce illegal immigration by 50%. And then over the course of the next year, reduce it down to 65%, down to 75%. And then when Trump was elected, we had reduced illegal immigration down to 85%. What Trump has done is to reduce it the rest of the way. So there's barely a trickle of people coming across the border now. But here's the fact. Trump is president for less than 4 more years. What we need to do here in Texas, but also working with the Trump administration, we need to make sure that we are securing the border for not just the next 4 years, but we need to prepare to secure it for the next 40 years to maintain the security of our great state. We'll work with all the legislators here, as well as members of our congressional delegation, as well as the Trump administration, to accomplish that goal. A couple of other topics. I want to pick up and add something to what Senator Hughes said very artfully about property taxes. You know, it does harm housing affordability. The complaint I hear the most about the affordability of housing is the high property taxes. And what everybody who was in the legislature last session knows, we took the greatest, largest step ever taken to reduce those property taxes. Remembering this fact, the state does not levy a property tax. Only local governments levy property taxes. But what we wanted to do was do our best from an outsider's perspective to try to reduce those property taxes, and so we used $18 billion to buy down property tax rates and to increase homestead exemptions. And some people felt it at first. Thousands of people felt it. Until local jurisdictions began going behind their back and increasing property taxes. And all I'm hearing about today is not thank you for using $18 billion to cut property taxes, but you got to stop the rise in property taxes. Here's my point. We in the Capitol are embarking upon the effort to cut property taxes again, to use billions of your taxpayer dollars to reduce those property taxes. But you can't commit the violation of repeating the same thing again, expecting something different, if you don't change things. That's why the only way it will work for us to use your taxpayer dollars to cut property taxes again is if we prevent local taxing jurisdictions from going behind our back and raising your property taxes. At a minimum, we should require this, and that is, if they're going to have a vote on it, it should be a vote of 2/3 of all the voters in that jurisdiction. And it should be held in November, not one of these other days, ensuring that everyone's going to have a vote. Last thing I'll talk about is something I've been talking about for the last couple of years now, and that is school choice. Listen, the fact is, when debates occur, if you're going to debate appropriately, you're going to debate fact versus fact. My facts are better than your facts. My reasoning is better than your reasoning. But when you have no facts on which to base your debate, it forces your opponents into nothing more than lies. And that's what's happened in this. I've never seen not just the amount of lies, but the repetition of the same lies even after those lies have been debunked. Schools are going to be defunded if school choice passes, which is not true. Everybody knows that there's a set of money, a pot of money basically, that goes toward public education. And by the way, in that pot of money going to public education, this session is going to end with that pot being bigger than ever before, because this session will end with the state spending more for public education, with teacher pay being higher than it's ever been before, with per pupil funding being higher than it's ever been before. That is going to ensure that our public schools are going to be on the pathway they need to be on. At the same time, there's separate money. Just like we have separate money to build roads, separate money to build a power grid, separate money to build out water projects, we have separate money that will be going to school choice. It's not taking from one pot to give to the other. Completely separate pots. Funding school choice is not going to take a penny away from our public schools. But that doesn't stop the lies from coming, because they believe that if you repeat a lie loud enough and long enough, maybe people will believe it. Other lies. One is, and this isn't so much lies, this is really more uncertainty by concerned parents. I've had some of these events that I go to, there'll be moms come up tearfully saying, listen, I homeschool my kids. I'm scared to death. This school choice program is going to harm my ability to educate my child the way I want to. And I told that lady, in no way will the state of Texas ever deny your ability as a parent to educate your child and homeschool the way that you want to, period. Same concept applies to the private schools or whatever other types of schools that students may choose to go to under school choice. The goal is not to alter the curriculum or anything like that. A private school is still going to be able to teach the same curriculum they've taught every other year. And remember, all of this is choice. It's optional. No one and no school is required to participate in it. There's no mandate from the state of Texas. It's complete choice. Another lie is that it's only for the rich. The fact that the rich already have access to school choice. This provides a level playing field for every family to be able to choose the best school for their child. One thing I have observed over time that I wouldn't be surprised if maybe you have made the similar observation. When you look at the arguments made by leftists, they're kind of outrageous arguments, and they'll make them over and over again, and when they realize that their argument is actually not connecting with you, they will ultimately go to what they think their safe space is that you can't rebut, and they'll just call you a racist. And that's the end of the argument. The same concept applies with regard to school choice. They don't make the racist argument, but there's an ultimate goal. When every other argument fails, they go to the ultimate argument they think is going to win, and they went to that argument yesterday. They threw down the football flag. Yesterday they came out and said it's going to destroy high school football in the state of Texas. And then the rebuttal to that was posted online. When you saw the map of the United States of America, for one, every state in the SEC, which happens to be the best college football league in the United States of America. Apparently there's some Big Ten fans out there, or some Big 12 fans maybe. So every school in the, every state in the SEC has school choice except for Texas. Surrounding Texas, you got Oklahoma, and it goes on up, and then you got states to the west of us, Arizona, and it goes up from there. You'll see that if you look at high school football talent, virtually every state that has a meaningful amount of high school football talent has school choice, with only two exceptions. One is Texas, and the other is California. Do we really want to be in a league with California? I don't think so. I don't think so. Along those lines, do we want to be in a league? Look at the people in the past who have supported school choice, or the present. Trump supports school choice. J.D. Vance supports school choice. Reagan supported school choice. On the other hand, you have Obama, Biden, and Harris. Which team are you on? It's easy. I talked about lies. Let me talk about silence. The critics of school choice have been completely silent about real reasons why parents need access to school choice. They're silent about DEI in their local public schools. They're silent about boys and girls sports. They're silent about bullying. I was in Athens, Texas a few weeks ago, talking to people in a private school there that have been created because they needed a choice for their kids there. In fact, the principal at the private school had been a principal in a public school. And his child, a first grader, had been a student at a public school there. And the dad came home, and his first grader was using every four-letter cuss word he could ever hear. The dad was astonished. The dad wrote them down. And when his wife got home, he showed his wife what their first grade son was saying at home. That night they realized they weren't wealthy, but they knew it was not right to keep that child in that school. And they made the decision that night to choose a different school on their tight budget, to send him to a school that taught values, not to use four-letter words as a first grader. Also at that event was a mother of a daughter who was the victim of incessant bullying. Think how a mom could lie awake in a bed all night long crying, not having any solution to protect her daughter from the bullying that she's experiencing at school. It's on her mind all day at work, on her mind when she's cooking dinner for the daughter, on her mind at night. It's crushing the mom in her heart every single night. That mom needs the ability and outlet to be able to find a different school for that child who's being bullied. And then there's these three examples that have surfaced recently. In Bel Air, which is an interior, it's not a suburb, it's like an interior city in Houston. There was a case where educators at Bel Air High School, they were aiding the transition of a girl in that school against the will of the parents of that girl. That's outrageous. And then there's Hutto, which is near here, and Irving, which is up in the Dallas area. Videos surfaced showing how administrators in those two schools told parents that they have ways to work around the state's ban prohibiting boys from participating in girls' sports. And the last one I just got to tell you was, I knew those two existed. I learned about one today that blew my mind, because I didn't think things like this really happened in Texas. Certainly not where it happened. Have y'all ever heard of a place called Castroville? Yeah, a lot of you have. So it's kind of west of San Antonio. I call it cowboy country, basically. This is rough, rugged Texas. And what I learned about Castroville, this is crazy to say, at Castroville, they have furries. They have kids in Castroville's public schools who dress as cats. They have litter boxes. If you were a parent of a child in any of these settings, do you think you should have the right to move your child out of that school? 100%. I want to thank the Senate for once again passing school choice out of the Texas Senate. The steeper hill to climb has always been the Texas House. This time, they have a leader armed to get it across the finish line, and that is Chair Brad Buckley. Brad, why don't you stand up? Committed, knowledgeable, knows all the arguments, knows the rebuttals to all the arguments. He's prepared to go to make sure that we deliver on something. You know, think about the role of government. You know, you got to keep the lights on. You got to keep things safe. But a lot of people don't think about the role that we have to play to protect families and family units. That is in part about what school choice is all about. Remembering this fact, the first teacher in a child's life is their parent. I hold this baby here earlier tonight. The mama is rocking it right now. You know what that mama's doing, even though she doesn't know it and the baby doesn't know it? She's teaching that baby right now. No government mandate can take away from any parent their right to be the primary teacher and educator of their child. I applaud these members of the legislature so much because they are on the precipice of a session that's going to make Texas history. Texas is great. Texas will be truly peerless in a few months as we close out a session for the ages where we continue to advance our state and maintain our status as the greatest state and the greatest country in the history of the world. God bless you all, and God bless the great state of Texas. Thank you, Brad. Thank you all.
The greatest state in the greatest country has the greatest governor. Please give him another round of applause. At this time, I'd like to welcome Jill Tate back to the stage for an announcement.
Good evening. I'm Jill